Hello, my name is Emily Hawthorne, and I'm here with my colleague Faisel Pervaiz. We're going to be talking about the Kashmir conflict between India and Pakistan. So, Faisel, when we look at this conflict, it's decades old, this conflict over the territory of Kashmir between the countries bordering it, India and Pakistan. Why are we talking about this conflict today?
So it's a really good question, Emily. I think one way to think about this is that I once read that Kashmir was described as the crown of India. And I like that description because it sits on top of South Asia. And like a crown, Kashmir has always been associated with great beauty. And at the same time, it is a symbol of power. And essentially, during the partition of 1947, India and Pakistan both claimed Kashmir in full. And then over the years, they only got parts of it. And so ever since then, over the decades, they have both wanted it in its entirety. And in that process, we've actually seen the two countries break out into war. Now, war is generally concerning anyways, but what makes an India-Pakistan conflict more concerning is that they're both nuclear powers.
So what is going on today in Kashmir? It's been very difficult over the summer. There's been a lot of conflict, a lot of clashes between security forces, protesters, demonstrators. What exactly is going on right now in the summer in Kashmir?
Right. This brings up a really good point about Kashmir, and that is that generally, when people think about Kashmir, they focus on the international component of the conflict, meaning the rivalry between India and Pakistan. But what sparked the current protests actually involves the domestic component, which not as many people are aware of, and that is really between New Delhi and Kashmir. And essentially what happened was that in July, there was a militant commander named Burhan Wani. He's very popular, and Indian security forces killed him. And immediately after Wani's death, you saw the streets around the capital of Indian Kashmir, Srinagar, erupt in protest. These have been deadly protests. We've seen over 80 people, mostly civilians, die. And what happens a lot of times in the dynamic of this Kashmir conflict is that the two countries will find a way then to blame the other. So it often has a domestic underpinning that ends up spilling out into the international arena. And the latest development actually is that so between the two countries has already been at least heightened rhetoric. Mm-hmm. But it was against that backdrop that just on Sunday, you had militants, which were allegedly from Pakistan, although that is not confirmed yet, who attacked an Indian army outpost. And 18 soldiers were killed in that. So now if you are India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, you're in a very tough spot because on the one hand, you recognize that going to war with Pakistan, which is a nuclear power, is dangerous and the costs are high for both sides. But at the same time, you do have your domestic base, which is now clamoring for military retaliation. So those are some of the challenges happening there right now.
The stakes seem very high. So this was a topic at the UN General Assembly this week. When you look at the conflict, where do you see it going in the months ahead?
Right. I think that even though we are reading a lot about the potential threat of a military escalation, and that's always a possibility, I think that the two countries, they're not going to go to war over this because once again, if you are Modi, your other big objective is that you're trying to attract foreign investment into India as part of building the economy. And there are few things which will deter that investment than the instability that is born of a potentially nuclear conflict with the next door neighbor. So we already saw Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif address the UN this week, and as expected, he did raise what he terms are India's human rights violations that are taking place in Indian-administered Kashmir. Now, what we're looking for is on Monday, India's External Affairs Minister, Sushma Swaraj, will be then addressing the UN General Assembly, and what we can expect is that she will also try to really galvanize the international community to taking India's side in supporting the notion that Pakistan is a supporter of extremism. And I think what we're going to see in the next few weeks is really some heightened tensions on the diplomatic front. And what that's going to do is that's going to give Modi some more time to mull some other options.
So we'll be watching that closely.
Absolutely, yes.
For more on the Kashmir conflict, please go to stratfor.com.